Have you made your substitute teacher manual yet? Or how about customizing planner forms or kindness reminders? I have so many of these things on the Cool Cat Teacher store. Just go to store.coolcatteacher.com and use the code podcast for 50% off anything in the store. Now on with the show. Episode 347, Whose Land? Understanding Indigenous Peoples Through Edtech.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Happy Edtech Tool Tuesday. Today we have Michael Furdyk with us. He is co-founder and director of innovation for Taking It Global. He inspires classrooms all over the world to connect and collaborate globally. Now, Michael, you have a new tool. Tell us about it.
Sure. Hi, Vicki. Thanks for having me on today. Yes, we have a new tool that we've launched working with several organizations up here in Canada called Whose Land, which is kind of a play on the whose line is it anyway? And the idea behind this, it's an app and it's a website at www.whose.land. And the idea here is really to raise awareness about the first peoples of Turtle Island, of North America, as Indigenous people call it, and to help students and educators and schools all around the world, but especially here in North America on Turtle Island, learn more about the traditional territories, the treaties and agreements that have been created, and all the different Indigenous communities living on the land, as well as featuring content created by youth and students across North America.
Is it just North America, or are there Indigenous peoples featured from other countries?
So far, we have North America, we have Australia, and then we have a few different regions in Central and South America as well. So it's something that we're hoping to grow and expand, and it's definitely open to participation from around the world. But we've just started with the kind of closest communities that we were aware of.
So, Michael, if I'm a classroom teacher, what age students, and when they log in, what types of things will they be doing in Whose Land?
Really, it's designed for any age group. Here in Canada, we had a commission called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was looking at how we can kind of make up for many of the kind of injustices of the past. And one of the recommendations they had was integrating more into the education system about Indigenous people, their culture, their language, and their contributions. So we've really designed this to be accessible for every age and grade level. Obviously, teachers can adjust, the content they might choose to explore, but the experience is really map-based. So when you go to the website or you load the app on an iPad or an Android device, you can click on Where Am I? And it'll basically show you, what are the communities and territories and treaties that are closest to your location. So there's that kind of fun location-based way to explore. And then there's also a map. So students can actually click and zoom. For example, on the west coast of the US and Canada, there's so many different territories and communities compared to the East Coast. And so it's kind of fascinating for students to just go through, click on the different communities, click and learn and explore many of the different First Nations, for example, here in Canada, or Indigenous groups, and just discover and learn more about them.
So what ages are you seeing get excited about this?
Well, one of the things that I think is most powerful about the platform is that we're trying to engage more of young people from these Indigenous communities as content creators. So we have a program we're running right now across Canada where we're providing equipment to 50 different communities. So we're giving drones, GoPros, 360 cameras, laptops for video editing, and we're having these students create content to tell stories in their communities. So primarily the content creators are middle and high school students, and we also welcome teachers who may have Indigenous students in their classroom from a First Nation, from an Indigenous community, to contribute, to have those students go and capture a story. Maybe it's from an elder or a family member, or it's something that's been passed down to them, because we're hoping to create this community of content that's being produced by youth and students from all over North America and all over the world.
Okay, Michael, so you've got middle and high school students creating content that other students can explore. So would you think that maybe the younger students might enjoy exploring what the older students are creating? So we really have kind of a powerful multi-age thing that's kind of starting up?
Definitely, yeah. One of the things that's happening here in Toronto, for example, is our school district, all 500 schools, every day before the school day starts now, they're listening to a land acknowledgement. So they're hearing about the fact that, we are working, living, learning on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit. They're hearing these names, but it doesn't really mean anything to them. And so a big part of what we're trying to do, and when you go to the Whose Land site, you'll see that on the homepage alone, there's 10 videos, by young people across the country. We're trying to bring that land acknowledgement to life. So what does it mean? What are their cultures and traditions? that we should care about. And a lot of it is, bringing stories, for example, teachings through the animals, through the different, the clan system that they have. And so a big part of the goal of the site is to raise awareness about the amazing history, the stories, and really a lot of their traditions are about protecting and caring for the land, which is so important in an era where, we have climate change and environmental impacts happening on the world that need to be mitigated.
Obviously, these are sensitive issues. Do those types of things arise as the kids interact? Do you ever have problems? Do they have conversations or share content? Or do you feel like the students feel respected by one another?
Yeah, they do. And this links really closely with, we have a global collaboration we run called Decarbonize, which is looking at climate change and the environment, working as part of the United Nations Climate Change Conference that happens every fall. And the theme last year was actually decarbonize, decolonize. We were bringing together, students from schools in about 15 different countries, and in particular, looking at Indigenous peoples and a lot of their teachings and traditions, and particularly in terms of caring for the earth and the environment. And I think that when students realize that, this is a concern that is not just recent over the last few years, but something that Indigenous people and activists have been fighting for the last few decades when it comes to resource extraction, the expansion of things like pipelines here in Canada. I think it's actually the students are awakened by those stories, and they really feel compelled to act and to do more.
So is there a fee to participate? Do they have to sign up? How does that work?
No, the site's completely free on whos.land, and the Decarbonize site is decarbonize.me, and that's also something that teachers in schools can explore and learn from. We have a paper that was co-produced by these students from around the world who collaborated together. They went to the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Germany last year, so every school sent a representative and a teacher to be part of that dialogue. And one of our close partners, the Center for Global Education out of Edmonton Public Schools, Terry Godwald, who's the teacher who founded it, he says, education without action is like eating without exercise. The idea of how can we put these ideas, put what we're learning into practice. And I think that, Whose Land sets the tone for that. But ultimately, as an organization, taking it global, our tagline is inspire, inform, and involve. So we're always looking for ways that we can encourage students to put what they're learning into action. And I think with this particular issue, a lot of it comes down to deeper understanding and reconciliation. And I think it's a generational shift where there needs to be, and we're already seeing more awareness, deeper understanding, and really appreciating the contributions of our Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island.
Taking it global, did you start in 2006? Or I was trying to remember when we first met.
Yeah, we launched our programs for teachers in 2006, but I actually co-founded Taking It Global in 1999. So I was in my last year of high school in grade 12.
How do you feel about how far we've come? Because honestly, I've been doing global collaboration for a while. You've obviously been doing it a very long time. Sometimes it still feels like we're having the same conversations and that folks still think it's a new thing when it's really been possible. I mean, there have been some educators who've been doing it since the 80s. Is it frustrating for you to feel like, why aren't we further along? Why isn't every classroom on the planet collaborating and connecting with other classrooms?
Yeah, it's a good point. And, organizations like IRON, you're right, founded in the 80s around the bulletin board systems and modems and, collaborating back in the day. I think that ultimately everyone always says, what's measured matters. And it's only as of this year that we have global competence being measured now, at least in a beta testing way by the OECD and the PISA study, where they're actually looking at, how might we measure global competence around the world. And we have some countries that have opted into that. So I think the challenge and the pressure that's on teachers with standardized testing and with, especially in high school, a more rigid curriculum, it's not hard to see why there isn't more collaboration. But at the same time, I think that we need to make sure that as leaders are, updating curriculum, as they're, investing in technology, we remember why we're doing it. And I think, I always look back to that British Council's study they did of employers and governments around the world, and they found that knowledge and awareness of the wider world was more valued by employers than the applicant's degree or final grades. So thinking about the kind of globalized world we're heading towards and we're already living in, students being prepared and aware and sensitive and appreciative of, international experiences and cultures and collaboration is going to be critical to their success. More so, the study would say, at least the Global Skills Gap study by the British Council, than the grades they get in school.
Wow. And, as I've often said, students are the greatest textbook written for each other. And we're building the bridges today that the society of tomorrow will walk across. Of course, there's some folks who aren't building those bridges because you can talk about China in a textbook, but if you can connect with other kids in China, you'll really learn so much. And in a world that seems to be more divided every day. I believe that the teachers who are connecting kids and flattening those classrooms and removing those walls are truly the ones that are making a brighter future for tomorrow. So I hope all of you will check it out, whos.land, as well as Taking It Global and decarbonize.me. So we have lots of resources to take a look at to help us to connect, to empathize, and really understand our world better. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.